Okay, so welcome everyone. Ideally, Claire, we have two classes together, which is one of the postgraduate class, which is called EST 504, and undergrad, which is EST 204, and they have similar content. And because I get all the experts in, I want them to kind of like take advantage of, listening to the experts. So I invite them both. So for all my class, I'm so pleased to welcome Claire Seldon here. And I would let her introduce herself, but I know that she is, expert in virtual reality, and you will very shortly see that. So not taking too much time, Claire, I will let you first introduce yourself and then present for today. Before I just hand it over to you, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional owner of the land where we meet and study and live our lives. So I pay my respect to past, present, and emerging. So over to you, Claire.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name's Claire, and I've turned my camera off because in addition to losing my voice due to COVID, so please excuse me if it gets worse as I go along. Last week I decided to eat some Rocky Road, and I bit into a very soft marshmallow, and one of my front teeth literally snapped off at the base. So I currently look like a hobo. Which is just, and Kashmir has very kindly said it doesn't matter and there's no judgment. I personally cannot live with the thought that there is a video out there of me missing one of my front teeth. But I am a vain and silly woman, but that's where we're at. So I'm going to turn my camera on just once more so that you get a feeling of me as a human being. And then I'm going to talk to you as a black. I got to the dentist on the weekend, Georgia, and they told me it would be 2 weeks to get a denture because the teeth around it are apparently in such bad shape that there was no way to do a temporary. So I've got 2 weeks, and I am doing this exact thing in meetings for work with, I work for the New South Wales Department of Education. So just to tell you a little bit about myself. I used to work in IT in the 90s, and I worked through Y2K, and it sucked being a woman in IT in the 90s. I know it's a bit better now, but it was bad. The sexism was just overwhelmingly, excruciatingly awful. So I decided that I did not want to work in IT anymore, and I went back to university to become a high school science teacher because science has always been my passion. So I did a science degree and a teaching
you would have felt so alone in STEM as a woman as well.
Yeah. Yes. It sucked, but I know it's better because I have female friends in IT now, but it's still not great. But in the 90s, it was bad. So I went back to uni, trained to be a teacher, and discovered doing that course that an awful lot of people who were becoming teachers were not very good at using technology, which was sad because as far as I'm concerned, like if we don't teach our students how to use technology and we as teachers don't model good use of technology for our students, we're not adequately preparing them for their adult world. So when I started teaching, I used tech. I used tech a lot. I used tech all the time. And I loved it. It was awesome. But after about 6 years, I was the only science teacher. And then after 3 years, head of high school, because it was a very small little, I taught at a small Montessori school. Then I burnt out from teaching. And I was really, really lucky to get a job at the New South Wales Department of Education as a learning designer. And while I was there, I had the best boss in the universe because he took a chance on me as somebody who'd never worked in a government school and only had 6 years in the classroom. But what he wanted, you know, was somebody with a whole bunch of tech skills and teaching skills. And so what I ended up doing was creating all sorts of quite cutting edge teaching resources, including the first Department of Education made student-centered teaching resource, which I'm going to show you today. It's quite old now, but at the time it was a really big deal. Hi, Rena. I'm sorry, just so you know, I've got my video off because I messed up my teeth. So I do apologize. If you want to see what I look like, rewatch the beginning of the video. So I'm very fortunate to actually, over the years, had some really exceptional opportunities. And so I want to show you some of the things that I've done and some of the things that other people, awesome people I've met have done to give you an idea of what's possible. Because what I find when one of my jobs over the years has actually been to teach teachers how to make basic virtual reality experiences themselves and how to use VR and AR in the classroom in a way that's not scary. Because a lot of people think, oh, mixed reality in the classroom, it's expensive, it requires expensive equipment, all this sort of stuff. And it's actually not true. You don't need big fancy headsets. Most of the time you don't need anything more than a phone or an iPad. So primary school, iPad, high school, students' own phones, it's a Google Cardboard headsets, or even laptops and an interactive whiteboard. For AR, you need a phone or an iPad. So let's have a look. So augmented reality. You want to think of augmented reality as a layer of content on top of the real world. Most of the time when we interact with AR, we would use a phone, perhaps an iPad. There are now some really cool AR MX or XR, which is mixed reality headsets, where they sit on your head, but it's kind of like a Google Glass idea, where the screen is not black. So you can still see the real world, but the little eye screen is putting stuff on top of the world. They're very cool. They're more expensive. Most people are familiar with the Pokemon Go because it was a huge craze. And you still see, I may still play it sometimes. And if you go around and you see little groups of people, often not children, let's be clear, standing around sort of staring at their phones or pointing their phones in the air, they are usually people actually outdoors playing an AR game. There's quite a few of them now. There's a Minecraft one, a Harry Potter one. Pokemon Go is still the best. But the other thing about augmented reality that people sort of fail to realize is that you can create really basic, cheap, and yet awesome augmented reality experiences in your classroom just using QR codes. Because the minute that you have QR codes around your classroom space and the children can scan with their phone if they're older, or their iPad if they're in primary, that is an augmented reality experience. So what they're doing is they are getting extra information about the world. That is all augmented reality. You are adding a layer of content on top of the real world. So my husband is a maths teacher. Now, I have turned on sound and this should work. Can you guys all see this? Can I get some thumbs up to say that you can see? I'll just let it load for a second. That you can see this video playing. It's being recorded on someone's screen. If you are a maths or science teacher, this is the most amazing thing. So this is GeoGebra, which is this awesome graphing calculator website, but they have an AR app. And the most awesome thing about this is that this actually lets students in real time adjust an equation and then see a change. Now, the reason why this is better than a video or on a piece of paper is two reasons. One, the student controls it. The minute we know from experiential learning research, and we know from general research into sort of hands-on activity, that when the student makes a change and sees immediate feedback, they learn more. We know that it is educationally provable. So something like this, where you're asking the student to understand a really complex equation that graphs in a 3D space, this is outstanding. So obviously it's not for younger students, but for older students, you're really giving them control over their learning. Kashmira, you want to?
So are you showing it, or because
so this is somebody else's video. So what I've done on the slide, there is a link down the bottom. The link will take you to the a GeoGebra webpage that a teacher has made with instructions on how you have to download the app onto your phone. Yeah, so I can't really show it to you now, but after I finish later today or another time, you can actually download it to your phone. It's free. Have a play with it. And as much as possible, I've tried to do that with all the different examples that I'm showing you guys today, because as we know, I just said, experiential learning. You guys need to see this stuff. You need to play with it. You need to think about how it could be applied in your space as much as possible. So I've really tried to do that. Okay, this is another really cool example. So both of these are things that somebody else has made, but the GeoGebra one, you as a teacher can make content specifically for your students. This one is just something that people would sign up to. And I have tried to focus, I've only got a few examples for adult learning because I know you guys are teaching. But so although this, again, technically for older students, so what you've got here is a situation, you can see, where you've got this manipulatable 3D image that you can explore. But the other thing that this app can do is you can point it at, say, most high school science classrooms will have a model of an anatomy model, a basic one. And with apps like this, the student points the iPad or the phone at the model, and what they get is an augmented experience. So they get more information. In some cases, the example is they can click on it and find out what the thing is. It might even show them a video. It shows them zooms in or shows them more detail. So again, all these different augmented reality experiences are about adding to the student's experience of the real world in some way. I've got a link there to their website down the bottom so you can have a look. It's paid, but it's also really great example of giving students control of or adding extra information to their environment. There we go. Okay, so now this is a very, very silly, it's pretty old now. But Metaverse, the company that makes it, no longer updates it or pays attention to it. So I strongly recommend not using it in your classroom. And I think it's a bit buggy these days. So if you download it and onto your phone and then scan that QR code, you can see this very, very silly little thing that I made. The cool thing about apps like this is that they are really basic to use. And so either as a teacher, you can make something simple for your students to interact with, or you can actually get your students to play around if they're old enough. I successfully used this Metaverse app with, again, it was a long time ago, it was pre-COVID. I was doing some work with a group of schools up at Port Macquarie. And what they had done was they were doing a STEM transition program to encourage the year 5 and 6 students to consider transitioning to the local government high school. because a lot of students were going to the Catholic or independent schools, especially the more talented students. So the local high school got me as someone from the department to run a program with their teachers at the primary school and the high school. And because it was Port Macquarie and it was a tourist town, what we did was we got the primary school students to research different areas around Port Macquarie, little tourist areas, and make little experiences, so videos, pictures, information. And then the students, each group of primary kids, worked with 2 high school students, and the high school students made the Metaverse app. And so what we did was we geolocated it. So when you, as a tourist, walked around Port Macquarie, you would see a little sign that said, there's tourist information here. And if you opened the Metaverse app in your phone, then you moved it around and it brought up this work that the students had done. And we partnered with the Tourist Commission to make a little flyer so that when tourists came into the tourist office, they got a little flyer which said, hey, download the Metaverse app, and as you walk around, look for these signs. So it was really exciting, actually. And it was augmented reality, but it was the students making it. And it was a real world example, because the students got to see, hey, the tourism board of Port Macquarie is interested in this. It was very cool. This thing that I'm showing you here is not nearly as cool, but just gives you a really basic idea of the kinds of things that you can in fact do with augmented reality apps. There are newer ones now. Most of them are paid. This one was free, and you only had to pay if you wanted to geolocate. So as long as you were using the QR code, say in the classroom, you could do that with students. Okay, so let's think about them. Benefits, AR, it's interactive. I mean, that's the thing. It gives the students are in control, gives that instant feedback, student-centered. Again, students are in control, but also the student is potentially revisiting, exploring. If your classroom, if there's lots of different things in your classroom and there's information that you need, say, to use a particular device, to use a piece of equipment, rather than the student always coming and asking you, oh, sir, miss, how do I use this? Have a QR code next to it. They can watch a video. They can read the instructions and just remind themselves. Some students won't need it. Some students might need to scan it every single time. It's also a layer of differentiation because, again, we all know students with poor executive function, they need the same information over and over again. And you can't always give it to them. There's one of you and nearly 30 of them, sometimes more or less, but they're tiny and need you more. So it's easy to use. AR is super easy to use. Most of the time, it's either a single app that you just open and go for, like the GeoGebra or the Anatomy one, or some of the other ones, or it's literally you get your iPad, you get your phone, you scan a QR code, and away you go. And it's relatively inexpensive. Most of the time, a QR code and a Google slide, it's still augmented reality. The minute you are adding information to the student's world, it is augmented reality. Kashmira.
Yeah, I think we are still seeing that GeoGebra slide. I mean, that screen.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Okay, hang on.
Yep. Do you want me to upload? I mean, like share my screen and I flick through the slides.
No, does that work?
Yeah. Now we are seeing what is VR. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, you were meant to be seeing this. This was me talking to the benefits and challenges.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why. So I thought that everybody would get it because I have already shared your slides to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if it happens again, please tell me straight away. So the challenges are that there is an argument that
So we are losing your voice, I guess.
You lost me. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry. Don't know what happened there. Try that again. Okay. Can you see my screen and you can hear me?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Not quite sure what's going on. Okay, educational benefits uncertain. I will talk to this a bit more broadly when we look after we look at VR and start thinking about XR. Lack of available content. So if you are not confident to create stuff, there isn't a huge amount of stuff out there, and that is a drawback. And then there's the skill and time needed to create your own stuff. So if the sort of generating your own QR codes and making your own little mini content and whatever is like, oh goodness, that's a lot of time, which it can be, or skill they maybe don't have, which is understandable. But I think it's worth it. And I usually find dip your toe in would be my recommendation. All right, so let's look at virtual reality. I'm going to look a bit more closely into what it actually is in a second, but basically it's a 360-degree sound and interactivity. They don't all. Some of them are literally just still around. Most of the use that we see in the classroom is a Google Cardboard style headset, even if it's not actually made out of cardboard. That's just
You are breaking. So we lost you again, Claire.
So it says I'm already here and it won't let me screen share because apparently there's another me.
Oh,
let's try that again. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Okay, let's try this again. Where were we? Okay. Printing cardboard headset. You can get big clunky headsets. They're really expensive. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but if you aren't, I strongly recommend checking out Erica Southgate. She's the most amazing researcher in VR. She works out at Newcastle University. I think she's just a legend.
Yeah.
Am I still there?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes. And she did a bunch of research for the Australian government on VR a number of years ago now. And her research recommended that students under 12 not use full immersion headsets. There's just, it makes people sick. And particularly young children actually struggle with telling the difference between VR and reality. And when you watch them with, say, a Google Cardboard headset with no band, they're constantly taking it off to check the world and then putting it back on. And they actually need to do that as part of that experience. So for really young children, we would recommend that they used an iPad or that the VR experience was up on a big touch screen where they can see and potentially walk up and move it, but that it's not on their face. And then for children up to year 6, they can have the Google Cardboard headset, but without a strap. So they've got that choice to take it off and put it on.
I mean, I think it's challenging for adult as well, Claire. I just had recently once, and it was a cliff in University of New England, and they were showing that cliff and that whatever original site. And even though I knew that I am in a room, people are around me, I refuse to walk a step further, because I thought I will be off the cliff. So it's very, very challenging. So I can,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I can tell what you're saying. Yeah.
And something like 20 or 30% of people get motion sick, more women than men, and I do. So I am someone who, I love virtual reality. I make virtual reality experiences, but I can't spend more than about 10 minutes in a full-on headset because I start getting seasick. So when I'm talking about virtual reality, I am talking about all sorts of virtual worlds. So let's have a look, because there are some interesting definitions here. Sorry, excuse me. So it's an experience, it's normally within a computer, and it's an immersive environment. So some of the key things here is that it can be similar to the real world, and there are a lot of important educational uses for virtual reality experiences that are similar to or identical to the real world. There are equity considerations, in fact, or can be completely different from the real world. For example, there is a really amazing young woman in STEM, and she's a doctor now, Karina something or other, and she got started working with the West Australia plant organisation, and her remit was to help students understand plant cells. And so what she did was create these amazing virtual reality fly-throughs of plant cells. And no student will ever get to go inside a real plant. So that is a completely unreal environment, but extremely beneficial educationally. Equally, VR experiences that allow you to explore the universe. You know, we can't go do that, but they're definite value. So another key definition here, that middle one, is about feeling present in the world. And that's actually what Kashmira was just talking about. She knew in her heart of hearts that she was not on a cliff, but the environment had been created such that it triggered her fear response to the point where she couldn't walk forward. And it doesn't matter that she was telling herself. So that being present in that world. And if you are going to make VR experiences, let me tell you, sound is the key to that. I have made a number of experiences now, and the best ones always have sound. Now, I made once an office VR, which was about fire evacuation. And so once the fire alarm went off, that was my sound. But before that, I found online a free office sound recording. This tiny little, it was quiet, it barely had anything. It was literally just the sound of air conditioner and a little, like, really low level sort of random noise. But the difference in the, and I'm talking, this was something that was being used on a desktop. This was not immersive at all. But the difference between experiencing that virtual space with the sound and without the sound was profound. And the other thing is that the third example specifically talks about the fact that we create these environments designed expressly for human interaction. And I would argue that that is the importance of AR as well. AR, VR, in both cases, what we're doing is we're actually adding to the world in some way, even if it's a virtual world. We're giving the students information, control, abilities, choices that they almost certainly wouldn't have in the real world. So I'm going to show you some examples now. How are we going over time? Oh, I always talk too long. So I'm actually going to exit out of the slideshow, but I have included the link. This one is a little bit intensive. I wouldn't look at it now while you're also Zoom screening, because it's a little bit bandwidth heavy, in part because the images that I use are such high quality. So I'm going to turn on the sound. What I've got is, this is a virtual bushwalk. So it's a virtual excursion. This is the first thing that I created for the Department of Education. So I created it in partnership with the Royal Botanic Gardens. And the reason that we did this is because they're out at Cumberland Plains, which is quite a long way sort of inland and south of Sydney. And they found that the schools around that area are quite poor, and that the students in the local area couldn't afford to go on excursion to see this endangered woodland. And students in the Sydney area, it's almost a 2-hour drive one way. So unless you're coming down for a camp or something, it's not practical for a one-day excursion. So what they wanted to do was create an equitable opportunity for students to explore this ecosystem. So there's a few different things that I've done here. Everything that the students can click on is a question mark. And the reason for that is because I did not want them to know what they were going to find. I didn't want them to know some of these things are insects, some of them are plants, some of them are animals. I didn't want them to only click on the animals because they think animals are cooler. Some of them are videos, some of them are pictures, some of them have multiple pictures, some of them have links. I didn't want them to know any of that. I wanted this to be a genuine discovery. And the coolest thing is we got to go out there. So most of these pictures were taken by one of my colleagues, the photographer. So these are all things that we saw while we were out there. And then in some cases, we linked them to more information. And look at this. When we went back the second time, when it loads, no, wrong one. Where is he? Ah, here. When we went back the second time, come on. Oh, there he is again. So this was clearly his area, which is just very exciting. So what I've done here is I've given the student choice. They can choose where they go. The map actually allows them to jump from location to location. So they don't have to go in order, but they can. Now, when I take my students on an excursion, we all have to go together. And the school that I taught at, I had some interesting young people with some challenges. And some of the challenges that they had included things like attention deficit. So one of my boys, if he'd been able to do what he wanted on that excursion, he would have run that track backwards and forwards 5 times. And each time he did it, he would have seen different things. But he couldn't do that. He had to go as slowly or as fast as we wanted to go. And some of my other students could get very focused in one thing. This, if I have a student who wants to go through every single scene and click every single question mark and look as long as they want, they can do that. The other thing about virtual reality experiences like this one, which is about the real world, is that whenever we go, we only see what's in season. So if the creek has water in it, we see it. I can tell you there's no way we would see the lace monitor because he would hear my large group of clompy teenagers and he would be out of there. So one of the things that we did with this was that the Botanic Gardens gave me a list of all the key species, plants, animals, insects, etc. And I included them regardless of the time of year that they would normally show up. So that virtual reality experience, even though this one does not work in a headset, yeah, this only works on a desktop or laptop or an iPad. That's it. But it doesn't matter. It's still, yeah, technically all this is a list of species with pictures of them, some videos, and I could have made a flat website with all this information. But by embedding it in a space and place, giving it sound, by giving the user that movement and action, what I've done is taken what information that students might not be interested in and put it into a space, a virtual space that is engaging to them, that encourages them to spend far more time than they would finding out about this environment. So the next example I'm going to show you is actually not, I'm showing it to you in the website that it's embedded in. I'm going to mute that. Okay. So when I was working for the Learning from Home, beginning of last year, we had students starting year 7 during COVID. And one of the coolest things about studying science in year 7 is getting to play in the science lab. And those poor babies, it's their first week of year 7 and they don't get to do it. So what we had to do was find a way to give them some of that experience. So what I asked them to do is first, I asked them to just look. So this is literally just a 360 flat still image. There's no sound. There's no interactive. I just wanted, but they can zoom in a little bit. I just wanted them to look. And again, one of the benefits of this, let's say, for example, I have students with some anxiety about starting high school. Let's say I have some students with some behavioural issues who might need time and space to orientate them to a new environment where they should not touch things because there can be big consequences. This gives them a chance to explore that space in their own time without accidentally setting something on fire, for example, which can happen. So then what I asked them to do in this instance was I asked them to observe. So they needed to fill out this activity template. 3 things that look like they're there to keep people safe, 2 things you don't understand why they're there, and 1 thing you think could be risky or dangerous. So once they've had a look, I'm trying to orientate them. So they're probably going to go back and have another look to write those down. Then I've said to them, right, I want you to explore, but this one's a bit different. I have hidden important safety information inside this lab. Use your mouse to search around for useful information. When your mouse hovers over a key spot, a magnifying glass icon will pop up. Remember, we're aiming at year 7. They're not much older. First week of year 7. Some of them will say, oh, this is too babyish. Most of them won't. So there we go. But when I click on that, it brings up a pop-up. Gives me some good information about the Bunsen burner. You can see that in full. And crucially, it gives me a great video made by a science teacher about how to use a Bunsen burner, which again is a big deal because normally my students, they want to do that. And again, my students can look at this as much as they want to. Now I'm going to keep looking around. Spill kit. Hazard sign. Now you can have a bit of a closer look at all the different hazard signs. I've told them there's 9 because when I originally made it, I didn't. Now look at this one. This is the do not touch. So I've made it bright red. Don't touch. So I got my fire safety. It's basic, but it works. It's still a virtual environment. And I have used the same one twice. And that's why I didn't just want to show you the one. I wanted to show you that we don't start with the safety one. We start with orientating, looking, and then we move on. Very, very basic. Isn't going to take them more than 15, 20 minutes to do. You, as a teacher, make something like this really quickly and easily. The software that I use to make this is called Situ. It is drag and drop software. They have teacher licenses where you can get your students to make stuff as well. But just as a teacher, you can make all sorts of really, really basic stuff really easily. Okay, so this one I am going to show you, but I check time. Yep, this one I'm going to show you because it's super cool, but I have not given you a link to it because technically I made this for Keith for a research project he's doing, so it can't be public because it's not, you can't share it with people. So the brief for this was for year 4, 5 and 6 students needing to learn about the Great Barrier Reef and conservation. And what I did with this was actually just made a VR teaching the students how to explore the bigger VR. And we're hoping to get funding to let me build the bigger version. So we start by looking around the scene. I've got instructions there. Click on this button for more information. And this tells us about the research station that's there. Don't forget to look up and down. I look up, I look down. Hover your mouse over the fish. There's a clue. Click on the clue. Come on. I might close some of these. This one's a bit intensive. There we go. So now I've got a lovely picture of the fish and I've got some information about the fish. So I'm going to keep looking around. Ooh, this is a knowledge task. So now what I've got here is an embedded quiz. And I need to answer the question. So I know that this is Lizard Island. And look, it's telling me, no, I spelt it wrong. And then it says, is it an endangered species? And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say yes, it is, because I wasn't paying attention. Now it says to me, okay, finish. And then it says, did you find the secret code word? If not, have another go. You need to get all the questions right. I actually got the question wrong. And now I'm going to type in lizard. And I'm going to say, no, false, it's not an endangered species. Well done. The secret code word for this task is pollution. So now I've got a secret code word. I'm looking around, okay, that arrow, what happens when I click on that arrow? So what I've done is tried to make, this is the equivalent of a virtual escape room. So choose your own adventure style. There's a surprise to unlock. So when I look at that, I've got another quiz and it's saying, what is the secret code word from the Lizard Island? Well, I know that one, it's pollution. What is the secret word? I haven't found it yet. So now I have to close this and I've got to look around. And there's a dolphin. And so now here, what I've got is an embedded Google slide. And this has got a bunch of information about the dolphins and some links. Now what I need to find is the knowledge quiz. All right, so I won't show you any more of that, but basically what happens is that if they find the 2 secret code words, which is pollution and water quality, then they unlock the video. But if they get the questions wrong, the link to the video doesn't unlock. And this video is super cool. It's actually a 360-degree video of dolphins. So
we lost you.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. The video used too much bandwidth. When you play with this, you'll see it's a 360 video of swimming with dolphins. Super cool and perfect for that 10 to 12-year-old range. So I'm conscious that I'm running out of time, so I won't show you this one in part because it's adult education. But I wanted to show you, get you to have a look at an example of a choose your own adventure style responsible service with alcohol VR made by this amazing company called Yes VR, and they've given me access to one of their, you can see it's actually on their dev server, but I'm allowed to show it to students. So I've shared the link with you guys. And just to give you an idea of what is out there, although not necessarily something that you guys can actually make for yourself. Oh, and I forgot to unmute this. So this one, what the sound for this is underwater diving bubbles and dolphins in the background, which, yeah, it's cool. All right, so we're running out of time. So let's get rid of those. Let's come back to why. So why? When we talk about the benefits of Yep, am I back?
Yes, you are.
Wow, I'm so sorry. This is embarrassing.
Do you want me to share the slides, Claire?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any other videos or anything now at this point, just talking the slides. It should be okay.
Yeah,
right. It's up to you.
No, that's fine, as long as it goes well.
Yeah. So although there hasn't been a huge amount of research done on AR in education, there's been a lot more done on VR. I think most of the information about VR applies to AR. There is an equity. Like I was talking about before, with augmenting your classroom space, that can really support students with additional needs, including EALD. So let's say you're in an impoverished area, or an area with a lot of students from migrant backgrounds who may be struggling with English. One of the things you could do is augment your classroom with QR codes that included information in their home language. Because we know for EALD students, as the day goes on, they get tired. And if we want them to learn the content that we're asking them to learn English at the same time, it's really unfair. So if you augment your classroom space with another language, you're supporting the content of skill learning of your students by not requiring them to be learning English and whatever the other content is. And the other thing that can be meaningful and valuable is using traditional languages, Aboriginal languages. Again, it shows a level of respect for the students that you're acknowledging, and potentially, if you don't, you could have an elder come in and work with the students to help label the space, to support them. Or equally with your EALD students, you could do an English language lesson early in the morning that was about them helping you create the content that the student needs to help remind them. Obviously, cost of excursions I talked about before, but the high level of detail and experience definitely applies to both VR and AR. Augmented reality is literally adding more detail to whatever environment you're in. But in a virtual space, again, even if it's a space that you could go to easily, you can add extra information that's available to the student at the time that they want it or need it, as opposed to you tell them once they don't remember. At the quality of the learning, we know that immersive environments can give students far more of an enriching experience than just a video or just a worksheet, particularly when they have choice. Oh, there's a typo. I'll fix that later. So where it says feel present in and or better understand the world. So both VR and AR can support a student to feel more present in that environment or to better understand the environment that they're in. And again, it's about this environment designed expressly for human interaction. So you are creating a classroom, or you are creating a virtual space or a playground or whatever that has that inbuilt element of human interaction that doesn't need you there. So I'm a Montessori teacher. And one of the key philosophies about Montessori education is that the teacher is not somebody pouring knowledge into the student feet. The teacher is not the sage on the stage, the holder of all knowledge. In the Montessori environment, the teacher is a guide. And one of the things the teacher is supposed to do is create a prepared environment that guides the student without need for the teacher, giving the student autonomy in how they learn and autonomy and control in their space. And you can do that really well with VR and AR. So mixed reality, I'm not going to show this video, but I think it's really funny that I can't say the Spanish, but, you know, why don't we have both? That's what mixed reality is. It's often called XR. And no, don't do that. Don't play. There we go. Hopefully you didn't lose me. So mixed reality, aspects or use of both virtual and augmented, mostly fun. Some headsets, apps, QR codes. Now the problem here is that I have seen and used some really cool experiences, but I don't have any examples that I can easily show you. So unfortunately, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to talk to you. It's terrible. In fact, I tell you what, just for fun, let me turn on the video again. Lots of me talking, my apologies. So a really cool example of mixed reality environment in adult education. One of the students that I was teaching in my postgrad course, she was a learning designer who worked for a company that did radiology and imaging of all different kinds. And they had an issue with a really high turnover of staff. And so what they were finding was that their staff were coming in and nobody had time to orientate them to the environment. In some cases, the equipment that they were using was different to the equipment in their last job, like same, does an x-ray or does a CAT scan or whatever, but it's slightly different brand, looks slightly different, whatever. So what she did for her major project was she did two things. First was she created a VR environment that they sent to their new employees before they came in. It showed them where the toilet was. It showed them where the coffee was. But it also showed them all the equipment. And when you clicked on the equipment, like when we clicked on the Dolphin before, you clicked on the equipment, it popped up a video from the manufacturer that introduced you to the piece of equipment and how to use it. There was a click on the hand washing instructions with a video. Then what she did, and what takes this from virtual reality to mixed reality, is that all around the environment, she added QR codes. So next to the hand washing, next on the machine, she put QR codes. And it showed the same video and the same information that was in the VR. So I saw the VR, I know where the toilet is. I do not remember the 5 different pieces of equipment, but when I'm there, I see the QR code, I scan the QR code and up pops the exact same video. That's mixed reality. That's where you've got the same space in a virtual environment and an online environment. As a very clever idea, and is definitely something that schools have done. So another example of mixed reality in a school, again, it wasn't an educational experience. It was orientating new students on the spectrum to the school. What they found was that students who were transitioning from primary school to the high school were struggling when they came on the transition days. There were too many students, everything went too fast, they're having meltdowns and anxiety. So what they did was they created a virtual reality space of the school that the students could go around, and they gave them, this is where you'll have lunch, this is where your homeroom is, all that kind of stuff. But then similarly, they put QR codes around the school so that the students, not just the students who on the spectrum, but any student who was new It scanned the QR code and up popped a map that said, this is where you are, and a little bit of information about it. But sometimes all you needed was the map. Sometimes you also wanted the extra information. And again, it was the same information that was in the virtual reality experience. So that the students who had used the VR experience to orientate themselves, when they were in the real space, they had that same augmented experience. So those are my two good examples, and it's 8 o'clock. So sort of was hoping to have some time to answer questions, but I'm happy to stay a little bit longer if anyone does have questions.
Anyone attending right now have any questions? Let me see what's happening in the chat. Okay, besides it's amazing from how we are we have come as far as technology is concerned. Yes, you're right. But before Claire, I let her go away. You have any questions? Then you can. You have about like 5 minutes, let's say, to ask any questions.
Yeah, type them in chat or pop off mute. I don't mind. And I put my LinkedIn there. I am very responsive to that. I'm still giving career advice to and design advice to people I taught a few years ago. You'll never guess, but I'm a teacher and I love sharing.
Yeah.
So,
thank you. Yep, that was really great, Claire.
No, my pleasure. It was fun.
So if we don't have any questions, I'll just stop recording.